Hi guys, this is the Seattle Ring Hunter coming to you from Seattle, Washington. I'm here to speak today a little bit about the latest release of the Deus II metal detector from XP Metal Detecting out in France. Any of you that are actually within the metal detection community already know what an amazing machine this is. Everyone has their own personal ideas on it and some thoughts. Some people are still wishing and hoping that they can quickly get their hands on their own unit. I was one of the first in the US, from the first US retail release, to get my hands on it, so I've had some experience with it. Just to be clear, I have not taken mine into a scuba diving water situation as of yet. Currently, as of the time of this video, we are experiencing 30-degree weather. Snow has been coming and going. I am a dry suit diver, fully capable of taking and doing some testing, but I'm going to wait for it to warm up a little bit before I actually dive in. But what I have done is I've completely modified my original XP Deus II shaft so it is fully capable and ready for that situation when it comes up. Just recently, Calibash digger, I have a great deal of respect for him and I support him and a lot of his points. I think he's doing a really great job over there. I'm not all about stirring up the drama and all the haters out there. They can just do what they do on the side, but let's just speak from a perspective of experience, expectations, reality, and what's really necessary and what's not necessary as far as the configuration of the dive shaft and how we'd like to see that. Backing up just a little bit, before Calibash's recent announcement that XP Deus is actually going to release a dive shaft where they've taken out some of the metal of that shaft, because this was rooted from a concern that was brought up by another gentleman here locally in the Pacific Northwest that I have a great deal of respect for, which is Pay Streak Super Freak. You can follow his YouTube channel. He has hours and hours of footage of testing of all the latest machines. He is really digging on the Deus II, as a lot of us that have this machine are, and I have a great deal of respect for the years and years of metal detection exposure experience and expertise that gentleman has. Really, and Calibash as well. I don't care if people are going to dig on him negatively or not. I actually know that Calibash is a smart, intelligent gentleman, and he has a lot of great points. So I'm not here to bash on anybody. I'm just here to provide my perspective, and just kind of curious if XP Deus is just jumping the gun a little bit on this dive shaft that's not really truly necessary. I will point this out specifically from my background. Just a little introduction on myself. To be honest, on the full-time metal detection is just over 5 years or so here in the Pacific Northwest. I've played around when I was a child with the older machines and a little bit here and there, but I really got serious about it just over 8 years ago. And then I got involved with the ringfinders.com. Huge shout out to Chris Turner and that awesome, amazing service. It's a directory listing of independent recovery specialists. So he's got about 500 plus members on the directory as we speak now. So with that being said, I am an active participant for the last 5+ years or so on that service. So most of my diving started in 2017. I got fully scuba certified throughout the year of 2018, and I'm just coming up on 300 recreational dives. And I will tell everybody that I would put a percentage of about 90% of my metal detection experience, exposure, and involvement has been for lost item recovery, for looking for people's lost items. And that's everything from in the house, in the car, in the grass, the sand, the land, in the water, and all types of water, and even down to depths of 30-40 feet with a metal detector. Any of you that follow me knows that I used to use the MindLab Excalibur, and I modified that to suit my needs, even to a technical level of putting the power button on it so it wouldn't interfere with the pinpointer. I've done a lot of technical stuff. I have a very advanced technical background as a technician, highly OCD, everything from industrial, everything from background experiences being an RF technician on a bench repairing radios with RF service monitors and understanding circuit level diagrams, surface mount repair, understanding how mechanical things come together, how they fit together, how they break, how they work over the long haul. So that is my focus. and that is why I'm going to share this video, because I think it's important that we just take and put a pause on this whole XP Deus dive shaft thing and really reconsider what's going on here. With 300 dives in the Puget Sound, in rivers, streams, ponds, with zero visibility, with my own personal safety as a self-sustained solo diver in a lot of these situations, I am very high priority and high strung on personal dive safety. So that's where a lot of my stuff is coming from. I am not a hookah diver. I'm not a weekend warrior that goes out there looking for some treasure on the side here or there. I'm very specific and very pointed in going out and finding somebody's lost. If it's a $10,000, $40,000 wedding ring lost at 40 feet in the water, or if it's a $10 ring that just was from grandma and this person is distraught because they've lost it and it means everything to them, all the same effort, all the same passion, and all the same detailed high-end equipment is getting put into use. I mean, I've been with full scuba in 5 to 8 feet underneath a dock to get someone's wedding ring back, because that is actually for me the most efficient and most secure way of recovering these items quickly and efficiently, all the way up into being in streams to where it's just the flow is too much that I can't make the dive, to ponds and lakes that are cold. So cold water diving. So I'm in a dry suit and I've got a pony tank and a main tank on the back. So I've got a lot of gear going on. So with that being in the mix with this discussion, I think I have a little bit of opportunity to share what I find is important for a dive detector. I was actually going to tell you guys, I was almost about to go get the Sea Ghost and put the Equinox and throw it underwater, but I also knew that it wasn't going to be probably the best audio experience, because everyone complains about the audio tones of the Equinox as soon as you put your head underwater with headphones. And fortunately, before I pulled the trigger on doing that with my spare Equinox, the Deus II came to light, and it was out there, and then I said, okay, here we go. We've got a true machine that's going to be capable for diving. It's going to be amazing. I can use it as a workhorse for all around situations in the dry, in the grass, the sand, the backyards, the playgrounds, the wherever, on the side of the freeway. People are throwing things out of anger. People have dipped their hand out of the window while they're going down and the ring's falling off, and we need to check the sidelines along the roadways and the trash, everything. So there's a lot of different things, a lot of different demanding site and applications that I have for a machine, and that's why I really got excited about the Deus II being multi-frequency and all the technical things that it can do inside, and even if it was just meeting at the same level of let's just say Equinox. I knew that it was going to far exceed that, because I have friends and people out there that I've studied that have used the Deus I, and we know what a great single frequency machine that has been, and how durable and robust and how responsive XP has been. So this is not a negative flame. This is not a let's get it all dramatized and get going and get everyone all talking and getting all, you know, throwing things in the forums. This is just my experience. I just wanted to share some of my background, so you know that I'm just not some armchair metal detector guy just running his mouth and had a few ideas at 2 o'clock in the morning, say, hey, you guys are all like jacked up going the wrong direction. To back all this up, what brings us here today, a few weeks ago on testing, Paystreak Super Freak put out a video, and you know, I appreciate his candidness and the way he comes off and his energy. It really says a lot, and it got the discussion started, and that's great. I have no ill feelings or, you know, any hatred or anything towards any of these guys, but he did kind of get in there and give XP a little bit of a slap and say, hey, what are you doing, man? You got this thing, and I got the coil completely down here, and I'm shaking this thing around, and I'm getting interference from the aluminum components and the stainless steel pin on the clamp. You guys, what are you doing over there? You got to do something about this. This is not a good situation. So with that, a little bit later, XP Deus actually took note of that. They may have already known that, and it's just part of their release schedule. They may have been working on their dive shaft for quite some time before even the initial release of the XP Deus II, and they're just going to meter out their deployment, because we're still waiting for over-the-head headphones for this unit that'll come a little bit later. I mean, they got to get the unit out in the market, and they got to milk the cow for all it's worth financially, so they can continue to sell a product line and then meter out the accessories down the road. They're still trying to keep up with manufacturing after COVID, and the components being kind of slow and hard to get sometimes. You know, it's going to be a process where other accessories and things come up, we know that this is the way they deploy these things so they can make the maximum amount of revenue and return on their investment of years and years of development. So this dive shaft, I don't think was something that was because of pay streak necessarily. It might have heightened or advanced the promotion of this new dive shaft that Calibash had just put out yesterday morning, I believe it was, and announced it because they kind of leak it out to the public to get that draw on attention that, hey, here's something new and exciting, we're going to take care of you guys. That was probably on the board from the beginning. These guys are smart and intelligent over at XP Deus. They got amazing testers over there. Gary and all those other guys would have figured this out quite a while and say, hey, we got to do something about this. We'll get the product out there and then we'll come up with a shaft or something. We understand that. So being intelligent, we're not beating up XP saying, what are you doing? This is crazy, whatever. They may have come up quickly and said, hey, but for me, I don't think it was so quick that they were able to actually remold the handle in plastic and do all that. The plastic and injected molded plastic, it takes a while to make these molds. I mean, they've redesigned the handle to be plastic all the way up to the arm cuff. If you look at Calibash's video, I'm very detailed and picked that up right away. So this didn't happen overnight, guys. They just didn't go in the back and say, we're going to throw something together and take care of it. It's not like a quick, we're going to reprogram a software update and the machine's going to give you what you guys should have had from the beginning, like with Brand X, and that's a whole nother drama. I'm not trying to turn this into a drama. I'm trying to reveal what I have seen with my own eyes and what I've experienced. And I really don't think XP necessarily needs to build a dive shaft. If they want to, that's great. But here's my situation. This machine is going to be a workhorse and it's in my vehicle every time I go out. And if I get a call for a situation, I might be in a lakeside, a marina, or something where they're not exactly sure. They were up in the sand, they were up in the dirt, then they went and did a little swim. I may start out with that search in a dry situation and I need my machine fully extended and working as if I were in a park or in a backyard or in a field. And then I may go in at chest high water and start wading around to see if I can find it in the swim area. And it might actually turn in that day that we actually fully anticipated going full scuba and going to 20 or 30 feet. In the Pacific Northwest, some of my docks are actually 30 feet of water right below it. So the drop off is not real shallow and slow, but sometimes it can go out a few feet at the swim area and then just drop off quickly, like in Lake Washington and Lake Sammamish, of situations where I found that I'm quickly at 20 feet. And that is absolutely a scuba diving situation. And they were like anywhere between this part of the dock and this part, and it's already instantly going to be a dive situation. But in those same conditions, I may be doing dry searches with the detector at full length. So I have to be able to have both shafts like the original configuration so I can put it full out and full in. And now to the point that we have, some of the people have responded, this is a wireless detector. For those that don't have any concern for diving, it's a very nice and convenient thing to have a wireless coil with no cable going to the remote control main pod, and the headphones and all this being all wireless. That is awesome. That's great. As an RF technician with an RF background, I know once you get 2 or 3 inches underwater that wireless connection is no longer viable. I understand, and it's called a waveguide. It's a coaxial cable. The waveguide cable that they have provided in the kit clips onto the coil so it can pick up that signal, and like an antenna, it sends it through that waveguide up to the control, and you need that once you get underwater. That is 100% acceptable and understood. It is not a negative thing. It is amazing that they were actually able to come up with a simple way to allow the machine to be used underwater like that. For me personally, I'm not taking that on and off every single time. I tear the detector down and fold it up and put it in the back of my car at the end of a dive. The next day I could be back in the water, I could be out on the beach, I could be up in the dry. It's just going to stay on for me because of my applications and what I do. With that being said, that there's all these different components. When I load up my car, it's almost an hour worth of loading of dive gear or anything else. So I don't have time to be wasting around configuring and deconfiguring a detector. It needs to be ready to go, just as if anybody has a special tool that they need. It needs to be lock, loaded, and ready on the go. So that's one of my things as far as being efficient, and that's one of my applicational needs for my routine. With that being said, XP originally had the idea that people would do a candy cane wrap with that cable around the shaft. I mean, it's unsightly and ugly to begin with, but that being aside, it is still functional. They made the cable too long, but they did it because people would wrap it. Someone else quickly modified and put on the post, and I was quick to it, that they had shoved the cable, the coax cable, through the inside of the shaft. The lower shaft is plastic. The upper shaft is actually an aluminum shaft, extruded aluminum. They were actually to poke it through, and I'll show you in a minute the specifics, where they drilled a small hole at the end of the shaft so the cable coax waveguide could come out and attach to the remote pod. Well, if you do that, you have to snake the wire in about 3 to 4 passes inside because there's so much excess. And I was able to pull the shaft in and extend it and retract it for a few weeks, and then it started to bind inside of there, where I couldn't even get the shaft to go all the way in to the fully compact mode when I wanted to put it in my car for travel. So then I had to go and reassess it, as I knew I probably would have to anyway, and I figured out how much length to cut off of that, and I will identify that for any of those out there that want to do this modification. They can do that for themselves. And it basically, the coaxial cable goes in, the waveguide goes in, it goes down the shaft, back up, and I think it goes back down. So there's only like one S shape, so there's much less cable in there, and it does not bind at all, and I will demonstrate that. It goes in and out so easily. I'm very pleased and excited about that. One of the other things I will point out on any type of dive situation is that we all know Anderson shafts up there in Canada. Those guys have a lot of experience, and some of the things they provided for the Excalibur dive shaft system was, you need a way to clip anything. Anytime you get in the water, guys, all of your expensive gear, and even other gear that's not expensive, needs to have a way to clip off to a bolt snap. Divers all know this bolt snap, basically a double-ended bolt snap here. You got to be able to clip it off to dive gear. So it's clipped off to the diver, to a dive float or a boat, or when you're down below, if you have a down line, a rope or something, you can clip it off there to keep it secure. That is a #1 requirement. So when I first saw that, I knew that I was going to have to make a quick modification that I haven't published, but you'll see it here. It's simply the end of the arm cuff. I just put a small hole in the back there, and I put a piece of paracord line through there and put a knot on the inside, so it's basically a loop, and you'll see it's very easy. I just have a loop where I can clip off to the tail end of the machine. I'm not leaving a very expensive metal detector at the bottom if I have a safety situation, or if I have to cut loose, or if I need both hands free on my ascent going back up to the surface. I can easily clip the tail of that dive detector off to my D-ring on my BC dive gear, and I can have both hands viable to do what I need to do to have a safe and secure dive without having to worry about that. Typically I will hold the dive detector in my hand when I actually descend, but the ascent and some other situations, you definitely need to have a way to clip off that unit, or you have this great potential you could lose it while you're out in the water moving about and doing other things. So that was a quick and easy thing that they haven't even talked about, because they haven't reached out to someone like myself. And actually, I don't know, they may have, but they didn't reach out to me. Or and it's obvious that, you know, they're missing a few points here on this dive shaft they're about to come out with, because I didn't see anywhere any mention of this dive shaft having any type of a clip off, which is a #1 priority for any expensive piece of gear over water. Let's just face it. We're just here not to beat each other up, but we're here to bring very important small little details that have a huge, great, big impact and improves the value and the thought process behind the systems that they're going to put out in the market. Let's get it right before you put it out there, or altogether just forget putting it out there, because it may not be necessary. And I have a little bit of a different thought process on what I heard from Calibash already. So why don't we go ahead and take a look at the machine behind me, and I'm going to point out a few things. We're going to start out by addressing Paystreak Super Freak's point. Originally he was showing he'd take the detector, he had it fully retracted, which is what I would be using it to short while I'm in the dive situation. He was shaking it around, and he's like getting a lot of interference because there's metal components that the coil now becomes close to, which I'll point out. And you know, and you extend it and you shake it, and you're not getting that because the metal components are down lower, or up the shaft I should say. So that is easily mitigated actually. So I'm going to show you that there's no real change or anything that's necessary for this. It was a good point, but it's not really anything to get our feathers ruffled over, and definitely not anything we need to be changing out the upper portion underneath the handle, for Christ's sakes, and putting that all plastic. That is completely unnecessary. You can do it for a weight savings, but let's be honest, in its original, the Deus II was perfectly fine as far as weight is concerned, and I've got the 11-inch coil. I swing a 15-inch coil on my Excalibur too, and I'm not bitching about the weight while I'm underwater. I need the technical capability of finding lost items, and that little bit of weight is not slowing anybody down. So it's not really necessary, and I'll get into this in a moment. So why don't we switch the perspective here. Coming down here, I've already got this fired up. This is stock, and this is actually the 0.6 or whatever, the latest software version, but it is in the dive mode right now. And this is what Paystreak Super Freak was explaining, is that, hey, when I take this and bring it all the way in, you can see that there's a stainless steel pin here. And for people that haven't had this in their hand yet, this shaft is plastic. This is, you know, some high-end plastic here, and you got a plastic bolt through there, poly, whatever, glass reinforced, probably. It's pretty strong. So anyway, you got that. This has actually got some flex to it. If we lock this down, you can see that there's flex in this shaft. It's probably translating. There's flex there. This piece here is extruded aluminum, and it's rigid, and it needs to remain on this system and stay rigid for the long-term survivability of this, for a good experience when you're out detecting hours and hours in a park looking for treasure, looking for somebody's lost item, whatever it is. This portion of this shaft up here all needs to stay and remain. This is extruded aluminum. This issue is already addressed by putting blue Loctite on it. It's a non-issue. It's just an oversight. The factory can start putting that on at XP, and that'll be gone, and everyone can forget about that. We don't have to get all dramatic about a $1,600 detector and the screws are falling out. For crying out loud, get over it. It's nothing to be talking about. Just put your blue Loctite in there. If you've got one of the original versions in XP, start putting the blue Loctite in there on your future releases, and you'll be fine. You won't have to hear about customers even bitching about that. They won't even know. This is extruded. No, you know, actually, I think, yeah. Oh, is that plastic or aluminum? Doesn't matter. Even if this is aluminum, I believe it is. It might be plastic. And it's rigid. Yeah, it's a rigid aluminum, I think. Don't quote me on that. Anyway, it's not a concern. Even if this was solid metal, I could care less. The coil is over here. This is what Paystreak Super Freak was brought to light as a concern in his amazing ways. If you have it in dive mode and you listen, I'll shut up and stop talking here. When I have no metal on my hand here. You hear that? That is because of the double D coil nature, and it is crossing the fields with this piece of metal here, doing what it's supposed to do, is detecting metal. This stainless steel pin is the closest piece on here, even though we have some extruded aluminum coming into the plastic clamp here. Initially I thought, well, maybe I'll invest in trying to figure out how to just pop this pin out and put in a carbon fiber pin or something, and maybe that'll reduce it. But then I realized, hey, you still got some extruded aluminum here. How far do I really need to go to get away from this situation? I don't need to go that far. Still there. It's not there. It's barely there. It's a non-issue. I'm gonna hold this real still and be quiet. Versus this. So that tells me that if it's like this, and I'm in a diving situation, I don't really need to worry about it all that much. Listen, if we're getting a target, it's going to be much louder. It's going to be a much more solid signal than this little bit here. That is nothing. This is non-issue, guys. This piece being metal is a non-issue. It is a little bit of XP, in my opinion, a little bit of their reaction to show that they are taking people's comments seriously, which I really do appreciate, and that they're going to try to provide a better system. I can agree, excuse me, I can appreciate that the company's being responsive and proactive, and they're going to come out with this dive shaft. It's not necessary, guys. It really isn't. Completely unnecessary, and they might actually be doing themselves a detriment as far as the performance of this thing over the long haul, because this is what I was referring to before. If you pull this out, and I run it about 4.5, 3, whatever, in a normal situation, it isn't a problem when I'm swinging this over the land, over the dry. But I will say that there's flex. This flex here, in this portion of the shaft, but it's rigid enough that it's not causing a problem. But if we take this and we put another plastic shaft in here, there's the potential that you might get an excessive amount of, it's just not going to be as solid in the hand. It's not going to be the quality that we would expect or want over a 8-hour period, a 4-hour or 6-hour beach period or whatever. You need to retain this as a rigid shaft that's made out of aluminum, and the rest of this down here needs to stay the same as well. They don't need to change any of that. So in my opinion, I will not be buying their dive shaft, because number one, I need to be able to use this on the daily in the dry, and I need to be able to shorten it up and do a dive 10 or 15 minutes after I've done some long dry detecting and get my scuba gear on and just go. So that's the other thing. The modification as far as the waveguide coax, yeah, the little O-ring thing, XP, nice for you guys to have it for a quick release, but the reality is that scraping the bottom of this during the daily, that O-ring that you had, it's not a rubber band, it's an O-ring, guys. So let's use the proper term on it. It's an O-ring that they had that would go around, come around the backside and hold on this clip. Forget that. That thing's gonna snap off, and it's gonna pop off in no time, because you're sitting there on the ground. Sometimes you're over the rocks and maybe get over some asphalt and the sidelines and the curb strip or wherever, and that's gonna be totally gone. So we're using a wire tie, and it's cheaper wire tie with no metal tab in there. Just wanna make that point that it's all plastic. And that's going to secure that. You've got a whole bag of wire ties if it ever did come loose, which these are really durable. It'll last forever. If you need to take the coil cover off, because this coil cover actually captures a lot of sand, a lot of crap, I'm not going to gum up and put silicone around the outside edges just to keep the sand out of this machine. But these flare out quite a bit, and they actually, like a cup, scoop quite a bit of sand. So once your detector gets put back in your car and sits back there, and then it dries out and you turn it upside down, you got sand everywhere. So you just have to be diligent. You could get yourself a brush and just do a little bit of this after a beach hunt. Wipe it off with a brush. If you wanted to, you could even put a little plastic bag over it if you're concerned about your car getting sanded out. But if you're a beach hunter, you don't care. You're already prepared for sandy boots and footwear and diggers and shovels and everything else that you're using, sand, scoops or whatever. So that is true, though. I don't plan on pulling off this coil cover all that often, to be honest. I take a garden hose when I get home, I spray it and turn upside down and whack it, and it's fine. So the point being is that the waveguide can go in through this hole, go all the way up the shaft, and we are starting to make holes. Hopefully you can see this right here at the base. So if I pop the remote control off, a much better example to show this is right here. Just a small, there's two small Phillips screws that hold this plug in. At this point we can turn this off. You just make a small hole right there, the appropriate size hole, and you can bring the waveguide out, and it's actually really nice and convenient. It stays inside of there, and you can slide the remote control back on. You get it straight on, it clips in. Some people have taken that plug out and put in some of the lanyard clip retainer inside of that between the plug and the aluminum shaft. I just used the wire tie because I wanted it to be up at the top, because I didn't want it banging my hand when I'm doing hours of detecting. It's just annoyance. I'm OCD, I don't like that. So I got it choked up there, tightened up, so when I accidentally go, oh crap, I'm not losing a very expensive remote control and having to look around for it. I could be on the side of a lake or anything. I might have to get in the water just to find this thing, and I'm trying to find something else. That's not going to be good. So that is what I have. What I would like to say though is the waveguide, I cut off an excess length here of, this is a coax cable too, so when you take the coax cable and you cut off the end, you still have a inner conductor and a shielding. You see through this plastic there's a shielding, a braided shielding wire. That's what's shielding the signal to keep it from getting interference. So inside is a center conductor. So some of you that are out there that don't have the experience, not everyone has the same experiences and understanding, so I just want to share. If you decide to do this yourself, you're just going to cut off simply about 39 feet and be confident with that. I'm sorry, 39 inches. 39 inches, and you're going to lose this plastic piece at the end that they had molded on here, and that was as a keeper to engage in the top of the remote control, and then the clip goes over it. Well, the first thing you got to do is once you cut it, you got to take about an inch and you get some proper wire strippers, and you very carefully cut the outside sheath and the shielding off, so you expose, but don't cut too deep, because you still want the plastic over your center conductor and those wires in there. And when you have that, about an inch of it, then you get this heat shrink tubing. You can order it on Amazon, you can order it from your local electronic supply place, and it just takes a little heat gun. I prefer not to use a lighter. Sometimes it gets a little too hot and you start melting things. If you get a heat gun, it works better, but you can get away with a lighter if you're careful and you have experience of not getting too close and melting it. You can get it warmed up, and it takes a little bit. You gotta go back and forth and rotate it like a hot dog on a spit. You gotta keep rotating it to get the heat all the way around, and then you can come up with something like this. I put a few pieces on here. My main concern was to try to take a pair of pliers and clip off the end so we didn't get water, because I'm in marine salt water and other things. I didn't want this cable, but even if this cable gets impregnated and starts to get corroded with salt water on the inside at some point, this is easily replaced, and it's kind of a consumable over a season or two. I don't mind replacing that. I could get that from XP Deus and buy it for myself. This is sealed up pretty good though. I actually have two pieces here, and I took a pair of pliers while I had the heat gun on it, and I'm holding the pliers so it's a flat plier jaws, crimping this in as I'm heating it and kind of melting that down. So it's going to be pretty secure. The other end hasn't been compromised. It's in the same original setup here, so there's nothing that I modified there. I only used the cable tie to hold it onto the coil. So keep up with me, guys. We're still going here. So this actually works pretty well. This here goes around here, and I think I've got, anyway, you can see how that would work. It just clips on. I'll put that back on later because I want to continue on with this video. The one thing I will say that with the to be very cautious, I don't recommend that anyone take a drill bit and start drilling a hole through that, even after they take the remote off and they take the two screws out carefully and they get that little piece in their hand. If you take a drill bit, you have to be very careful with these drills that have a lot of torque on them. It can actually grab that plastic and shoot through the other end, cut your hand. Actually, the preferred method and the easiest way to do this, get onto your RC hobby, remote control hobby, go to your hobby shop, they all have them. They have these plastic Mylar case body shells that go over the top of the RC cars, and they have to have an antenna cable going through it, and they have to have these other pins coming through the plastic Mylar, and so it's part of a common thing on every RC car. So the thing that the tool that they sell is this, it basically is this tool right here. It's got a sharp edge here and a sharp edge over here, this reamer, and you can just, it's a needle point on the tip. So you find the spot where you want to start and just apply small pressure and rotate, and you can get it to any size you want. And it's a very, very controlled method of putting nice clean plastic holes exactly where you want them without getting it too large, without having a power drill, lithium ion drill, just take off the other end and damage that piece, and you're sitting here cussing yourself and you're calling XP, going begging that I need to buy another plug, I need another one, this thing ain't gonna work now, I've shot through the other end with the drill bit and destroyed it, you know. So let's not do that. just spend a few bucks. You can go to you can figure it out, Google it. It's a reamer basically, but it's very specifically has very razor sharp on one side here and then on the other side, so it actually takes it right exactly where you need it. That's the best tool. The last thing I was about to say is that I personally will not take a piece of expensive equipment into a dive situation unless I have a way to clip it off with a bolt snap. There's absolutely no way in heck that I'm going to take this expensive unit. And you can see here by backing up a second, by reducing the length of this waveguide, I can now see I've just pulled it too far because I'm here with two hands in the middle of the air, but you can see how that works. I just kind of pulled too far. I normally wouldn't do that, and I'll put it back together after the video here because I want to show one last thing before I close this video. The back side, hopefully you can see this once again. This is the arm cuff. I took the arm cuff off by removing the one screw. I noticed that it was hollow on the inside because the extruded shaft needs to go in there. I took this tool that I just demonstrated and I put a hole in there, just enough to hold this piece of paracord, and on the inside of the paracord inside of there is a knot that keeps it from falling out. With that being like that, I now have a simple way in the water that I can clip this off. And I can clip this whole unit off to my BC strap on my dive gear on my body if I need both hands free as I'm ascending or doing some other work. If I have a dive line, I can clip this off and I don't have any worries about where it's at. I can get right back to it if I need to take care of something else. So this is absolutely necessary, and that's no more than 2 inches in length. You don't need to do what Anderson did up there in Canada on their dive shafts, and they got it sticking out this far, and then you wind up tearing it apart, chopping it and cutting it and reducing the size anyway, like I did on the Excalibur dive shaft from Anderson. But it's definitely necessary, and this is the best spot for it, and it doesn't bother me when I'm just doing normal detecting for hours on end in the dry. It's a very small piece. I don't leave this hanging off of it. The bolt snap typically is on my dive gear or somewhere else when I'm detecting. It's not down here in the water by itself just banging around like this. That would be ridiculous. I don't need it. It's stowed in another location, and then I take the detector over and clip it on if I need to. So with that being said, I'm gonna put this down here and I'll put that back together in a minute. Hopefully this gives everybody a little bit more of a perspective on what's actually necessary and what's not necessary. I don't believe in one bit that spending extra money on a XP Deus II dive shaft is even necessary at this point in time. I don't think I'm going to revert back on that statement either, because I see that this here is already more than sufficient for what I need to do. Here's another thing that might blow your mind a little bit, but if you go out there, if you've been paying attention to anything in the metal detection dive community, we've got Michael Oliver, and he's actually got his coil on the end of, I think it's a crutch handle or something. He's got some makeshift thing. The point being is that for the Excalibur 2 dive coil, he's got it on a long shaft. Longer than I would probably use, but I think one of the points for him is that he's trying to have some distance so he can get his coil farther away when he uses a pinpointer right in front of him to get his target out of the sand or the muck down below, because when he turns on the pinpointer and he leaves the Excalibur 2 on, you get major interference and they're both fighting each other. It's just horrible, and it's a lot to rotate the knob, and that's why I did modifications on my Excalibur 2 and had a power button with a piezo button where I could easily just push on it and it would turn it on and off instantly. That was a lot of work. That's all behind me now. That was a fun experience, but now we've got this machine here, and we'll see how it goes. The other thing too, there was another person that was actually using a longer shaft when they were in the water, but I think that at this length, when it's reduced down, it's at the perfect length. It's going to give me a little bit more throw so I can get over a 5 feet wide distance, so I can actually, it's actually an advantage to have the opportunity to stretch it out just a little bit further if I needed to. It's less back and forth in my grid line approach, so I can actually not have to make as many passes if I can be in one spot and be on the bottom, and I can do a wide, like 5 to 6 feet left to right swath, and then advance a little bit and do a 5 to 6 foot search pattern, and then continue on and then cut around. The less lanes that I have to make, the more efficient I am on my air. When I'm down there, it is a complete battle against air time, air utilization, and the less that I move around, the longer my gas is going to last. The more that I exert myself and swim around and do all this stuff, the shorter the dive is going to be, which is the less opportunity that I have to recover the lost item that's down there. It takes a horrible amount of time to find some of these items that have been lost under the water. It takes multiple dives to come out there. You guys don't see how many attempts and all the effort to go in and all the no finds for stuff that was like, I was somewhere out here, I believe it was out here. We try everything we can to make certain that we've done our best due diligence to find it if we can. So there's a lot of video, a lot of dive experience, and a lot of detecting searches that I've done that you haven't seen on my 100 YouTube videos of recoveries and stuff. Yes, I don't post the no finds. I post the stories that are the recoveries, and we just all understand that there's a lot that haven't been found and a lot that goes on that hasn't been shown, and sometimes for very, very specific and good reason. Some of these situations that I'm helping people out with out here are active work in progress situations where I don't need to be telling everybody, hey, I was over here in Lake Union, or I was over here in Lake Sammamish, or I was over here in Green Lake, and we got a wedding ring out here. I'm not here to invite everybody else out there to go treasure hunt and find that for themselves, or even if they had good intentions to return it. These are things we keep very confidential, so I can at least get it recovered and know that we've done all that we can to try to recover it before anyone else even has information of it being out there. And that's the only way we can secure this stuff. Sometimes it'll be weeks or a month or two or even longer before I can make another visit on some of these to fully get that item recovered for these people. A lot of times it's, as you see in the videos, it happens in one day, maybe a second trip out, and we finally get over the top of it. But with all that being said, hopefully this is some interesting information that's been passed out to those in the metal detection community, also to you, XP Deus. We want to send our thanks and appreciation out to you guys. You guys all have my phone number. It's at the end of every one of my videos. So any of you guys that want to reach out and actually have a educated and discussion back and forth, share some ideas. I'm I'm open-minded. I'm not the expert here that has all the answers. I just want to make that clear. This is my perspective, and I'd love to hear more of your guys' perspectives. I've learned so much from all you guys out there sharing on YouTube. It's a great knowledge share, and I just want to make sure that the manufacturers are getting their full money's worth out of this product and making it the best they can, because we're the ones that ultimately benefit from this. I'd hate for them, as great as they are, to put out some other shaft that really maybe isn't necessary. You're causing your customers to break down a shaft. We're not buying a second $1,600 metal detector just to have it in a car, because quite frankly, some of these people are just scraping together to get their first one, and it's just an ass pain. Forgive me for that, but it's an ass pain to have multiple machines when you can have one machine doing everything and just be on the ready to go. I don't need to have a second one that's in a special dive shaft situation, and I got to run out there and grab the other one, and it's just no. One machine workhorse, and that's what this XP Deus is already capable of doing out of the box from its initial release to the US and across the country, across the world. The original shaft is perfectly fine. No need to get yourself all worked up. Do a couple of the modifications I just described there. Put a lanyard on the back so you can clip it off, so you actually can secure your asset, so you're not having to go back down. If you got a dive emergency and you just had to clip that detector off to your dive line and wait because you're at your dive flag, or clipped it off somewhere where it wouldn't float away and you got to come back later and get it, at least it's down there and it's secure. That's a positive. Put the wave guide on the inside of the shaft, shorten it like I said. I'm sitting here trying to make a video and I wasn't paying attention and pulled that thing apart. That is not the normal situation. You can see the markings of how many they have them marked out, and probably metric or inches, but it's marked out. You can tell when you're getting close to pulling it out of there. It doesn't happen. So I've been running this thing for a few weeks and playing around with it, making it longer and shorter, and I never pull it apart. But I can put that back together when I'm focused with both hands outside of this video. So don't let that throw you off saying, look at that, you pulled it apart, now you got to poke it all back together. It's perfectly fine. And when you fold it up, you can actually get it pretty compact and leave the remote control on, or you can take the remote control off and stow it away. And it can be a pretty small unit in the back of a vehicle. So with that being said, I'm the Seattle Ring Hunter. If you've lost anything in the Washington State area, of value, please, if it's in the house, the car, the grass, the sand, you're not quite sure, and you just know that you had it, a while back, and then you did a couple of activities and it was gone, give me a call. The number is 206-618-8194. I'm here to consult with you over the phone and provide a lot of information and a lot of things you haven't thought of after spending over 5 years of detailed analyzation of people losing stuff. We've got the ringfinders.com with over 500 recovery specialists, and on the daily we're getting 2 or 3 recoveries and all the reports coming back, and we study those reports. We understand how things get lost, and we understand more so on how to properly find them. If you've lost a buried cache, gold and silver coins that you buried in the backyard, or you think grandpa has a cache in the house or in the yard of gold and silver that was back 40 years ago and it's time to sell the house, or it's like, hey, we need to see if it's out there, I'm your guy in the Washington State area. Reach out to me. Once again, 206-618-8194. If you're outside of the Washington State area, go to the ringfinders.com and find a recovery specialist in your area. We have over 500 recovery specialists, and we're going to find somebody that can give you some help and get you back on the road with your recovered lost items. So with that, everybody stay safe, keep your valuables safe. Cheers, and we'll see you on the next hunt. I got a lot of exciting things coming up here for the rest of 2022, and some really amazing things I'm currently working on that should be pretty exciting. So you don't want to miss the next recovery. Bye-bye.
If you've lost your ring or special item of value, please get in touch with me at the SeattleRingHunter.com as soon as possible so I can arrange to do a search for you.